Krishna Govinda. No? Yes?
We're back up and running. Let me log into the chat room.
Well, we came back. I don't know if anybody's here. We were, welcome back if you're still here. We were talking about the early days of celibacy in the Hare Krishna movement. And, another interesting thing, that at the time the Hare Krishna movement began, it was around the time of the civil rights movement. And even in the civil rights movement, there were not equal rights or equal positions given to women in the civil rights movement, which just shows you or gives you an understanding of where society was at in relationship to how they dealt with women. And so the Hare Krishna movement existed within that culture. So some of that was reflected in how we dealt with women. Ooh, it froze again.
Sound is working. It said I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Sound is working.
Yeah.
Where's the chat? I have to get to the chat now.
Working on that.
Then you have to look at that crazy picture of me. At least it could have froze when I was smiling or something. So, and, okay, then you add to this mix that this is a movement which has come from a culture that had traditional values towards women. And we've been discussing this. Women take inferior roles, men are the gurus, women are less intelligent, women are more emotional, more selfish. All these ideas are there. It's coming from a culture that deals with all this, or at least talks about it in a way that caused us to feel and understand that women just should have, an inferior role. Simultaneously, the movement also came out of the hippie culture, where there was a lot of equality there. So there was this merging of these different cultures and people trying to sort things out. But really, when men started taking sannyas, and sannyasis were leading brahmacharis, this was really how in many ways, those men maintained their brahmacharya by having negative attitude towards women, because the Shastra said, really, if you get married, you're falling into a dark well. And so, men would have to talk about the dark well. You don't want to fall in the dark well, do you, Prabhu? You don't want to get married. That would be a fall down and so forth. So, if marriage is a fall down, that means connecting with a woman is not a good thing. If marriage is a dark well, that means a woman's not a good thing. So you put all this together and you could kind of understand how things evolved the way they did. But later on, what we saw was that most of those men needed to be married. So what was the use of speaking negatively about women? They should have been talking realistically about their need for female association, the value of that association, the value of household life, and so forth. But that wasn't spoken of. And then often when men would enter Grihastha ashram, they were going in feeling that they were taking a step down. And kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, they just stepped down. Not all, but some. Anyway, that's one angle of vision. Okay. At least you can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where are we? The audio should be working. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, probably I can hear you.
Yes,
Probably
you can hear me.
you.
You just have to look at that ugly picture.
Alex can hear you.
Can you get a better picture, Mano? Can you work on the picture?
Frozen. I can reboot again.
No. Don't stop the hearing. Yeah, okay. This has never happened in Krishna.com, which makes me think that Krishna's not pleased with what I'm saying and he's kicking me out of here. But Let's go back to the chat then. You're just going to have to look at that picture. So, so we're going to go back to, KMN was talking about trust. Some devotees don't trust you. Is that what you were saying? If you go up a little bit.
Let's see.
Where was it? We're looking for that. Yeah, here it is. Struggling a bit with trust with devotees because I sort of feel like I was betrayed by a devotee, but I'm working to get it back. Yeah. Just the other day, I was speaking with a devotee, and he was also talking about that problem. That and a lot of, for different reasons, sometimes devotees will trust non-devotees more than devotees. At least in certain areas or business dealings and so forth. So, yes, if we... I would say that your point is valid, that it makes it difficult if you've been betrayed. But I would also suggest evaluating devotees individually. Not, which I'm sure you do. But still it's difficult. Okay, but that's a different topic. So now there's something. So we're looking at this. What we're really looking at here is balancing notions which appear to be contradictory. Like how can you live and be happy and fruitful in grihastha life and be totally detached? For some, it's possible, but the wife also has to appreciate the detachment of the husband. Carol was saying, what was she saying? Asking, is it good for the wife to be attached to the husband? And Prabhupada,
If the husband falls sick, should the wife care? To what degree should she be attached?
Oh.
Should she care for him?
It's your duty. It's your duty. One thing that Prabhupada was asked, because this is so confusing, because there's natural affection there. There's natural your affection to your husband or your wife and your children, and you want to do anything you can to take care of them. Yet at the same time, we're constantly hearing about family attachment, and it's too much attachment is not healthy. So this question came to Prabhupada, and the devotee was confused, and so he was asking Prabhupada, is it okay to be attached to our children, or should we not be? And so Prabhupada first said, well, kind of almost, he didn't say this, but in his answer it indicated that was, in a sense, a foolish question, by saying, well, naturally, you'll be attached. That's natural. And also not only children, but husband and wife. But then Prabhupada said, but you shouldn't be too attached. So it was a little bit of a caution. And I think, but the way I see it, like KMM was asking, I believe it was you, KMM, you were asking about my own life. And as I was saying, if you're too detached, often that doesn't work. Just because it's almost like you're living with someone and you don't care much about them. You're not really there. You're just totally detached. So that's not good. That doesn't work. But at the same time, the way I look at it is, I always think, well, Prabhupada's saying we shouldn't be too attached. So what does that mean? Well, we could die at any moment. So you can't be too attached to anything in this world. We shouldn't be too attached to anything, not even our own body. That's the point. So naturally, because they're devotees, you want to take care of them, and you want their association. But there's an aspect of that relationship that may be material, and so that part of it you want to purify, so you're not just materially attached. And I mean, if you really look at material attachment and you look at it in relation to family, it really boils down to, the enjoyment you get from the people in your family. So if we say don't be attached, really we're saying don't be attached to the enjoyment you get. Or don't be attached to anything. Don't be attached to it. It means be detached from the enjoyment you get. So you want to be attached to serving them, taking care of them, but not attached to enjoying them. That's the ultimate detachment, to not be attached to enjoying someone. Just like you can be attached to so many devotees, but you don't want to be attached to enjoying them, or taking advantage of them. Okay. So we have Alex here from Indiana. Now we're keeping everybody up late. Well, I guess in Indiana you're an hour earlier or two. Okay. So K-Man's talking about appreciating devotees. So that's also a good point. You can appreciate without being attached to enjoying. And one thing I appreciate about devotees is how much we need them. You know, in my earlier days doing Sankirtan, I would ponder an interesting idea, because quite often we got arrested and thrown in jail, and we were thrown in jail with some unsavory characters. And I would think, what is better right now? Being in jail with these unsavory guys, or being thrown in jail with another woman devotee? That's a weird thing to think about, isn't it? But I would just question that. Would I be better off in that prison if there was a woman there who was a devotee? Or would I be better off just surrounded by these men who are not devotees? Anybody want to answer that question? Interesting question, isn't it? Let's see. Not being attached to attachment. Don't be attached to being attached. You know, Bhagavatam, it says, if you take the same attachment you have for material things and you place that attachment on the devotees, that's a perfection. Of course, really they're referring to advanced devotees. So there's this, there's this concept of being attached to devotees is a good thing, and there's this concept of being not attached to the family. And then often in the Bhagavatam, when it's talking about not being attached to the family, it may also mean that the family is not devotees. So then you can say, well, it's not bad to be attached to the family if they're devotees, as long as we're detached at the same time. So there's some balance there. All right, where are we going with this? Every learned man knows very well attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit. But that same attachment, when applied to self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. Yes, that's the verse. So then, answering that question, unless the man really can't control himself being alone with a woman who's not his wife, we're asking that question, would it be better to be alone with a woman devotee or in jail, or be with all these unsavory characters? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I was asking myself that question just as a form of appreciation. That as anyone, man or woman, trying to become a devotee, their association is purifying. Being alone with a woman is never recommended. And I thought if I was ever in that situation, I would tell the woman, I'd say, I would say, what if I were in that situation? We were just thrown in together in some weird situation. I would say we have to establish a relationship which would be very formal, almost like guru-disciple. But of course, Shastra says man is like butter and woman's like fire. And then the Bible says, if you put fire in your lap, will you not burn? So it's a difficult... But then the Bhagavatam says, it's worse to associate with men attached to women than to associate with women. So, I don't know. My tendency... What would you do, Manu, if you had a choice? They threw you in jail in Bosnia or in Iran or Iraq, and you're in jail with all these guys, or there's a woman devotee and they say, well, you guys could be together. Would you call your wife and ask her what to do? Would that be betraying your wife? Or
Should I get a bead bag and some beads?
as long as I got my bead bag and my beads and a blindfold. Well, it depends who the woman is. Yeah, I was thinking my inclination would be to be with her rather than be with all those guys. That was just, I don't know if it's the right thing, but that would be my natural inclination. Because she's a devotee, and devotees' association is wonderful. And Bhagavatam says it's better to associate with a woman than a man attached to women. So, but that may be the wrong answer. I don't know. That's just I would feel more comfortable being there. And I don't know. Be weird. Definitely be weird. It would definitely be weird living with those guys. I think in the long run, I'd probably come out more Krishna conscious with her than with those guys. What do you think?
I don't know what kind of realizations you'd get with all those guys.
Actually, I was in jail once with about 5 guys, but there were 3 other devotees in jail, so it was okay. It's not good. All right. You say, well, if the man could control himself, yeah, well, you could control yourself. I guess the question is how long you guys would be together. You know, a few days is one thing, a few years is another thing. Oh. No, I'm not comparing the women to unsavory criminals. I'm just saying the Shastra says you shouldn't be alone with women. And neither is it equal. I'm just saying, where would I rather be? Because in general, we'd say, well, you shouldn't be alone with a woman. And I'm saying, well, she's a devotee and they're not devotees. So there's no comparison. You want to be with devotees. I don't think that situation will ever happen. But it's an interesting question. Now, Carol says, on the other hand, you could preach to the non-devotee men, while you could become further into sense gratification with a woman. That's true. That's very true. But what if those unsavory guys didn't want to be preached to? They were all Muslims who wanted to chop my neck beads off, if not, and maybe chop my head off with my neck beads. What kind of love does he have for his wife if he can't control himself for one night in a prison? Yeah, that's true. Of course, that may be more than one night. If it was only for one night, I'd probably just hang out with unsavory guys. But if it's going to be for more than that, that would be difficult. You can become Krishna conscious anywhere, anytime. That's true. And it also depends on the woman. Yeah. Okay. Anirudh has another verse. Of all kinds of suffering and bondage arising from various attachments, none is greater than suffering and bondage arising from attachment to women and intimate contact with those attached to women. And there is another verse. Of all kinds of suffering, the greatest suffering is to be separated from devotees. what to do. Don't live, don't die. Not all men have that much problem with control. Exactly, yeah. Well, now that we've come up with this idea, maybe we should write a script for a movie, and this will be the theme. It'll be this: they get thrown into prison together, and they're preaching, just unrelated devotees preaching. And everybody escapes, but this one man and one woman get arrested, and they're thrown in this prison, and it's full of rats and bats and dirt and all kinds of scary things and scary people, and they give them the option to live together in the prison. And there's this whole drama of the tension going on between them and how they deal with it. Is that any good? No. Non-devotees wouldn't relate to that? Nah. They don't have that. They don't go through that kind of stuff. Oh well, maybe it's getting so late we're like, we gotta stop now. What prison house is men and women together? The one in Bosnia, right? Who knows? I guess the prison houses are pretty Krishna conscious in that way. Yeah. Don't go. All right. So, where are we going with this conversation? Was there a question I didn't ask? We were trying to understand. Okay, so I have a really good place I can take you to. Oh yeah, prison's not so romantic. Yeah, that's true. That could be a good point. Okay, so we'll think about this. And maybe someone get some realization. Krishna might reveal something. So let's go back to the early days of the movement, and there was a lot of prison's not romantic, so you could do it. I mean, if you were to really have to determine, say, well, if we stay together, could we follow 4 regular principles? Would it inspire us to chant around, to hear and chant and read? Or would it just become a mess in a while? Okay, but so let's go back. This is a good question. Can there be sexual enjoyment in a relationship if there is no attachment to pleasure? Can there be sexual enjoyment in a relationship if there is no attachment to pleasure? Well, I'm going to give an interesting answer, which is probably not what you're looking for. But the first thing is that Prabhupada says that any pleasure we get in the material world is our enemy, because it gives us a false sense of satisfaction. And any pleasure which is derived from anything other than Krishna consciousness is entangling. So it's kind of like eating something that's really bad for you, that's making you sick. But it's very subtle, so you don't experience it immediately. It takes many years until the disease becomes critical. So sense gratification is very similar in that it's not in our self-interest, but it feels good. So it's actually hurting us. So in that sense, we can say there's pleasure in sex, but sex outside of Krishna consciousness, even if it's pleasurable, ultimately it's not, because it's not helping us become more Krishna conscious. So how could anything which doesn't help you become more Krishna conscious ultimately be pleasurable? Now, I don't know if you're talking about some kind of tantric sex. I'm not a tantric expert, but Prabhupada never recommended any kind of tantric sex. Have sex but don't lose semen and like that. No. Prabhupada's position was just remain brahmachari. Very formal relations between men and women. Okay, the material world is a prison house. So that we're already in the prison. So what's the problem? Okay. So KMM is saying, well, why would you want to have sex if there was no pleasure? We have to live life and enjoy the things because we are not totally purified. Otherwise we'll become depressed. I was just reading today where Prabhupada was talking about capitalism, and he said doesn't work because the money can't make you happy. So they said there are 4 things that people have never been happy with in the past, they're not happy with now, and they'll never be happy with in the future. Who knows the 4 things? Anybody? Never been happy in the past with, never happy now with, and never in the future. Food. Number 1 is food. Never completely satisfied. You always want something new, right?
Alex is comparing it to eating an apple, his earlier point. He's saying we can recognize the fleeting moment and just enjoy the moment and then let go of it and not be attached to the pleasure of eating the apple. It's the whole philosophy.
The pleasure is for Krishna. So that's it. If Krishna doesn't make Krishna happy and it makes you happy, then there's something wrong. Right? Pleasure is for Krishna. So if you're enjoying something and Krishna's not enjoying it, that enjoyment is leaving within your heart another seed to enjoy that apple again, because you can't just leave it now. Because attachment, you want to hear a definition, interesting definition of attachment from Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras? He said, attachment means remembering the enjoyment you got from something. That's why you become attached to it. Because if something was not enjoyable, you would be detached from it. So when you remember the enjoyment you got from biting that apple, in the future you're going to want to bite it again. Now, what was I just talking about? I forgot my point.
Food is fleeting happiness. You're never quite happy.
Yeah, so Prabhupada, so there are 4 things. So it said you're never happy with food, never fully satisfied with food, you're never fully satisfied with money, you're never fully satisfied with sex, and you're never fully satisfied with life itself, in the past, the present, or future. So therefore, understanding that Krishna consciousness means gradually become detached from all these things. And Prabhupada, we look at the Goswamis, they slept 1 or 2 hours, they ate a little bit. So Prabhupada saw that as perfection. When you can give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, that's perfection. That's the ultimate goal. So when we talk about material enjoyment, any form of enjoyment, sexual or any other form, the goal is to eat as little as possible, to sleep as little as possible, to have as little sex as possible, and to defend as little as possible, or to ultimately not have to eat, sleep, mate, or defend. That's liberation. That's perfection. So that's the goal. So understanding that's the goal kind of answers all these questions. Well, where are we going towards? And therefore, we should give these things up as soon as we can.
Well, the Goswamis weren't sleeping more than 2 hours a night because they were having too much fun with everything else they were doing. Like if you're swimming in an ocean of nectar, you don't want to waste time sleeping.
Yeah.
So the goal being the negative, don't sleep more than 2 hours a night.
Right.
Positive.
So then you have this verse. Who was this? Was it by Jagyavalkya, or who was this verse? Was it by Prabhupada Saraswati? He said, now that I've become a devotee, I'm swimming in the ocean of nectar. So when I think of my past material activities, my enjoyment with women, it's distasteful to think about it, to think that was enjoyment. So that's how you know you're advancing in Krishna consciousness, that you're relishing Krishna so much more than anything else. Now, swimming, you can swim for your health. Prabhupada said that. You know that story, the devotees were watching this beautiful sunset and said, oh, Prabhupada, it's so beautiful. And Prabhupada said, if you're attached to the sunset, then you'll have to take birth again. So there's a difference between appreciating the beauty of it and being attached to it. Right? You can appreciate it's a beautiful day, the sun is shining, this is all Krishna's mercy. But enjoying it and appreciating it are different. It's all meant for Krishna's enjoyment. We can enjoy it as prasadam, all right, but even that enjoyment, that means we're enjoying that Krishna because Krishna enjoyed it. Right? I don't want to tell you what tantric sex is. Actually, you're supposed to be forgetting sex. It's not within the line of bhakti, that's for sure. Yeah, so Pradud says the problem with sex is it reinforces that you're a man or a woman, and the enjoyment, the so-called enjoyment you get from the body, just anything that we do reinforces itself. Bad things reinforce themselves, and good things reinforce themselves. So just like if you chant japa really well, it reinforces itself and you want to chant more. If you chant poorly, you can hardly finish your rounds. So if you perform austerity, you get a taste for it. If you engage in sense gratification, you get a taste for that. Okay. The only way to be free from the pain of losing and struggling is to beat the game. To beat the game is to remember your desires outside that dimension. So, anyway, what I would suggest is it's all really clear. If you study Bhagavatam, there are so many parts of the Bhagavatam that describe the nature of the material world, the nature of material enjoyment, our nature as those who are trying to enjoy, and then within the context, we're enjoying within this context of a small period of time. So there's a saying by this one. I don't know who he was. He said, a person who makes their life in this world successful without giving thought to the future is wise for a moment, without giving thought to the next life or after this body, is wise for a moment and a fool forever. So what I like to do is I like to visualize my life or see my life and see this planet from a different perspective. If you could go out of the present perspective you're in and go into the perspective that Krishna has, and start to see your life now as just a little speck in time. And all the things that you think are important, they're all going to just fade into oblivion in a few short years, along with this physical body. And all these so-called important things that we have to do tomorrow and the next day and the next day, that have no bearing on our eternal position, really don't mean much. But what really means much is our bhakti, is our devotion, and our connection with Krishna, and doing the things that enhance that connection and bring us closer. So, if you kind of take yourself out of this limited vision and look at yourself from that angle of vision every once in a while, it really clarifies things, because then you can just step back and go, wait a minute. I'm trying to enjoy this or enjoy that, but really, what's the whole point? Where am I going? What am I supposed to be doing with this body, with this life? Then you put everything in perspective, and then it becomes very clear. This is a waste. And that's why Prabhupada said, give this one life to Krishna. That's why he said that. Because he could see, okay, you give this one life to Krishna, you can get eternal life. And you've given so many lives to Maya. And Maya is so powerful that she creates this illusion that so many things are so enjoyable within this small speck of time, so that we forget self-realization, we forget our eternal duty. And she does a really good job of it, because we're always forgetting. Could you imagine if Krishna right now, at this very moment, came and took you back to Goloka? And for the last half hour you've been in Goloka. And then Krishna brought you back, and you're now on the show. You're now here on chat. You've just been to Goloka for the last half hour. You've seen the spiritual world. You've got your eyes cleansed, and now you've come back and you're fully realized that you're not this body, this is not where you belong, this world. What do you think you'd be typing in chat right now? Hey Prabhu, wake up. This is like nonsense. You gotta, you don't belong here. Just give all this stuff up. You don't need it. You'd be like overwhelmed, wouldn't you? So sometimes it's nice to imagine Krishna's perspective on us in this world, Krishna watching us from that perspective of the eternal holy Dham and our struggles to get ahead in our profession or in school, to pay our bills and do all these things which we think are important, to the point that we sometimes neglect our bhakti and become absorbed in the so-called pleasures of this world and just stand back and go, whoa, that's an interesting way to look at it, to detach myself. Okay.
I want to go back to something that Alex said. It looks like he's somebody who's new to Krishna consciousness and is trying to understand it. And he's saying about his apple, but what if I recognize that it's not me that's enjoying the apple, if it's an aspect of the Godhead, am I right?
Yeah. One of the ways you enjoy it is...
You want to repeat the question? I don't know if they've heard over that.
So where is the...
Here, it's, you see Alex from the top?
What if I recognize that it's not me that is enjoying the apple, it's an aspect of the Godhead? Yeah, if you recognize that, you use your senses for serving Krishna. And one way you enjoy it is by enjoying the fact that Krishna enjoyed it. And that makes you happy that he enjoyed it. So you enjoy it. Just like, let's say you invite your friends over and you cook for them. And then everybody eats, then you eat, and then you're tasting it, and you're enjoying it more because you're friends, and because you know your friends must have enjoyed it. So it's kind of like you're enjoying through them by eating it. So like that. That's how you enjoy. Have another one?
Pradud is on the second to last sentence here. Krishna sitting next to us on the couch, watching us play video games, wasting our lives trying to achieve virtual wealth. He's comparing that to the illusion that we're in.
Right. Yeah. You know what Prabhupada said in the Bhagavatam? He said, Krishna's always telling us, get out of this world, from within our heart. Do the right thing. He's always telling us that. We're not always listening, but he's always telling us that. So Krishna's trying to clarify our vision. But when you think about it, it's quite simple. Here we are. He's giving us a way out of here. We don't belong here. It's not our home. We're not going to be here very long anyway. And we have the opportunity to go back to Godhead. It's quite simple. And Maya's job is to just cover that realization so we completely forget and become absorbed in important things like our email, like our voicemail, like the latest app for our iPhone, like a faster computer, all these extremely important things that occupy tremendous amounts of time and energy. Chatting on Facebook, so many things that are so important, right? That's Maya's job, to keep us covered so we forget what we're really supposed to do. And it's said, therefore, sex is the ultimate entanglement, the ultimate of forgetfulness. Prabhupada said, when a man is in the arms of his wife, enjoying with his wife, he forgets everything or they both forget everything about spiritual life. So when we're in the height of any kind of enjoyment, we tend to forget our spiritual lives. So is there something else there?
Shantidasi is saying the analogy of Krishna sitting on the couch watching us waste his time is also true for a lot of devotees, not just devotees.
Yeah. Well, that's important because when you become a devotee, you could think, well, now that I'm a devotee, I'm immune. But just being a devotee doesn't mean you're immune. You're only immune if you are immune. If you think like a devotee, you act like a devotee. So that's a good point, because sometimes we think it's the other people, because I'm a devotee and they're not, so therefore what I read in Bhagavatam is describing them. It's describing us also. We have Prabhupada said in the Bhagavad Gita, he said, as long as we're conditioned, we're basically, our conditioning is that we're basically not devotees. said, we're trying to become devotees, but we have this strong tendency, foundational tendency, to think like non-devotees. So we're very much like non-devotees. So yeah, okay, that was a 2-hour show. I think we've exceeded our limit. I might have to pay a fine if we go any longer. So next week I have to go somewhere on Tuesday night, and I don't think I'll be able to make it back here in time. But I wanted to invite another devotee to come and speak about these things. But I can't say who's coming because I haven't asked her yet, but she'll be very good. And it'd be nice to get a woman's point of view on this, right? Okay. Whoa. The desire. Okay, this is from Rabinda Swarup. The desire to enjoy material energy is the source of the necessity for accepting a material body, which ultimately must grow old, become diseased, and die. Sex is the pinnacle of that desire. Therefore, sex is death. Wow. That's very interesting. Since every movie, every romance novel culminates in death.
More entrapment.
We're all anxious to watch people killing themselves through falling in love, not rising in love. Okay. So if any of you ever end up in jail and you have the option of living with the unsavory characters or the nice female devotee, let me know what you chose. Okay.
What's your email address?
You can email me at mahat@aol.com.
mahat@aol.com.
Yeah. Okay. It's 10:07 in Alachua. It's 10:09 in Alachua. So all's well in Alachua, and we will. I guess I won't see you for 2 weeks, and perhaps we'll save this chat and let the devotee who's going to give it next week read it, and we can continue. All right. I also have Gmail, so if you want to do Gmail, mahatmadasa@gmail.com. Okay. Thank you.